Hey everyone, Elizabeth here. Hope all is well. So I just wanted to do a quick video to share some thoughts in regards to this paradigm shift that we're in terms of navigating the truth and just talking about how we've all been deceived and questioning, so what are you going to do about it? I truly believe that none of us are exempt from being deceived or lied to. We've all been a part in some ways of maybe some lower level, we could just use the word even satanic teachings to some degree. If you start to look at the history of things such as the New Age, as well as the infiltration of certain churches, a lot of this does not come through authentic leaders and principles. They have leaned more on the dark occultic side. For example, the Evangelical church has been infiltrated by the Pharisaical Kabbalists, so that they've long infiltrated the American Evangelical church. I never uploaded that video where I talked about kind of like sketchy gurus during my questioning everything process. But one person that I did talk about who no longer lives is Swami Vivekananda. And so Swami Vivekananda is one of the yogis who was who brought yoga to the Western world. So let's just say the two leaders in that have been Europe as well as in America. However, Swami Vivekananda was a Freemason, and if you start to look at where he started to do a lot of his presentations when he brought yoga and or let's just say like Vedic teachings or spiritual teachings from India, he actually did a lot of his presentations at Masonic lodges. So it's obviously evidently clear that these people did not have good and great intentions. We probably know that the Bible has been manipulated either through the Roman times or that King James version. So I just think none of us has been exempt from being deceived and lied to, and it's almost like we have to lay everything flat on the table. It does seem like what we are discovering now is that Christ is the way. Christianity is kind of our last defense in this. We have to start to look at Christ and Christianity as its own teachings, more rooted to the Bible, that does not come always from the interpretation from religion or the interpretation from specific pastors. I believe that is kind of the way of the truth. If you're starting to look at this argument between, like the globe earth and flat earth, you're actually starting to see certain biblical verses come out about the firmament and the pillars, and it does kind of make these quite interesting truths come to light. In addition to the word NASA, you could look it up on Bible Hub, and it does root to the word Nasha, roots to the word deception. So the Bible, I do believe, is kind of our key code into the future. However, we have to start to be a little cautious of, or start to understand what has been used for control, what has been changed or manipulated to keep us enslaved to some degree. We've all been deceived in the sense of the marketing that has gone on through time and time again from products, fast food companies. They've brainwashed a lot of people to where we've lost touch with the sacredness of our temple. I mean, essentially, the West has adopted all of the 7 sins. And so whether you're Christian or, Islamic, or you're a New Ager, or you're a star seed, we've all adopted some of these more sinful ways of living. Like the New Age community is so obsessed over money and abundance and sex that, it doesn't seem like it's from higher teachings from God, because it somehow these people turn to be lusty. They end up turning toward drugs, drugs is a whole other topic I want to do a different video on, but now when you have universities starting to use marijuana and mushrooms in terms of their studies, a lot of people are like, this is amazing. And it's like, well, I probably am going to guess not, because I've seen people on drugs. I've worked with a lot of people who've done this stuff, and these people are caught in a loop and a trap. And oftentimes the people who do drugs, they somehow think they're more enlightened. The more they do drugs, they think they're more free and enlightened, when really they're stuck in a rat cage, needing more and more drugs. And plus it becomes very egotistical, like that they're way more enlightened than everybody else, when really they're like continuously descending. When you have universities that are outside of your traditional Yale and Harvard, when you have things like Johns Hopkins University getting their hands on all these plant-based medicines, you really have to start to raise an eyebrow, because Johns Hopkins is kind of like the gateway toward the NWO. So whether you have been deceived with that word of abundance, and you've been really gluttonous through fast food, or you're just selling bullshit to people for monetary abundance, or I'm just saying more deceived. Like, I've seen this in this new age community where people, it's like they do these meditation programs to like 30 days to get in a more abundant life, this whole get rich quick type of thing. And so a lot of people have used like spirituality as like a transaction piece, kind of like God is a genie in a bottle. Like, oh, if I meditate, I'm going to receive this. So, it's very transactionary rather than actually finding and discovering a relationship with God and cleaning up their own health and inner world. All of these things that we've been taught in modern society, I almost feel like a lot of the opposite is true. Like, God wants you to be he wants you to be stable. He wants you to be healthy and mobile and vibrant. These things are qualities that are not readily available through the modern times of eating a lot of processed junk food, consuming a shit ton of pharmaceuticals, contaminated water. So we have to do a lot of deprogramming. And so deprogramming, not only of our new age teachings, but also just kind of re-looking at the Bible and re-understanding certain things. Many Christian people are, or I should say religious. I'm not even just going to use Christians, because I know I've met a lot of Muslim people too, and they've been in the same direction. They fear energy. But the thing is, what is a unit of energy? That's the definition of a calorie. A calorie is a unit of energy. So obviously that in itself is the key to consume better energy. And that's going to come from your plant-based foods that come from nature, that come from the ground. They're not coming from factories or labs where there's artificial light. No, you want the food that's coming from the land, that is grown under the God-given light of the sun, which is, the sun is the sun in some aspects of spirituality. So here's the thing. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but, the Christianity has definitely been infiltrated. I mean, not only from the Loyola, if you know Loyola, that's like, Loyola University. It's all these Jesuit colleges. It's what happened in Spain many years ago, when the Jews and Muslims were getting kicked out. Many of them converted into Christianity, but more adopted the Catholic side, so the Jesuit side. I'm going to link this article below, but it's an article from academia.edu that says how the Pharisaical, God, I can't even say that word, Kabbalists infiltrated the Evangelical Church in America. So if we have all this infiltration, in reality, a lot of these mega pastors, they are Satanists. And the mega church does kind of preach, similar to New Age, just all about being favored. So once again, it's just all about being abundant. I had my own experience by going to one once with a friend when I was single, and that might be a separate video in itself because like my intuitive radars were just going off the charts. But as people are starting to rip each other apart by, no, this is real, no, this is real, this is the truth, this is the truth. I mean, this is part of that greater division that is ripping up society. And the thing is, there has been so much hate for Christianity. This younger generation has been raised with a lot of hate for religion and Christianity. And if you are still there, this is an open invitation to find healing. When you have wounds and hate that is extremely strong, these are opportunities and invitations to heal those aspects of your life or your personality. A lot of people have had really bad experiences. I was formally married to somebody who was raised a Jehovah's Witness, who got out. And any sort of spiritual thing I ever talked about, like when I was younger, I was a lot more into astrology and was like, here, you can really learn about your personality from your birth chart. And it was just like he shunned it all away. And all of that bad experience from childhood and the judgment that he got from his parents is still looking at Christianity based on what man has done to it rather than what its true intentions are, coming from the source itself, or at least developing a relationship with God. As things get crazier and crazier in society, because we've been degraded down to some of the lowest points that maybe our society has known. Now, the 20s and 30s did have a lot of excessive living, the same thing of what's today, like Paris and Berlin, if you want to look that up, of what that was like in the 1920s and 30s and kind of how that ended up leading to World War II. It is really interesting because it kind of seems like every 100 years we're going through the same cycle. And that same cycle was the same thing back in the 1800s as well. There were look this up. I actually found it off of a law website. There were in the 1800s, probably around, I think it was pre-Civil War, so 1820s to 30s, there was a political party in America that was the anti-Mason political party, because they knew these people were running the show. Think about that. Think about from almost 200 years ago. I think this was around 1820s to 1840s, around that time. We're in the same cycle once again. We were in it in the 1920s and 30s, and now we're in it again in the 2020s. So we have all been deceived because of this infiltration that has happened through all forms of spirituality in America and the West. It does seem like a lot of times when you go back to the source, it is more authentic. So for example, in 2007, when I studied yoga in India, I got a scholarship from my undergraduate degree, which I got at Bowling Green State University. I wrote a fellowship for it. And the male guy's here. And anyways, where was I going with this? Oh, yes. So through the yoga study, it was in South India. There was only 4 of us students, so it was really low key. But one of the teachings there is that he said that traditional ancient yoga was more like a religion, and that yoga lineage that I was studying actually preached abstinence, and it preached that, sex should only be commingled with 2 people who are in love and married. So how many Christian conservative people would agree with that? Yoga in the West has been completely trashed, predominantly from a lot of this West Coast stuff. You have women who are just sexifying their bodies by wearing little booty shorts and sport bras and flaunting around everything that is against all of the material vanity part of deep spiritual practices like yoga. So I always I've been like wavering. There's part of me that's like, oh, yoga can be really demonic, because it can be. Like, people, I've seen this happen in like Kundalini yoga and these more strict forms of yoga where it like people can get kind of possessed from it, because who knows what they're also channeling. They're chanting and channeling. I did a Kundalini yoga for quite a bit, for a while, when I was younger, or at least before I moved to Germany, and through like times of healing. But then I've seen it really help people, and I've seen it help college students. I've seen it help corporate and people and senior people, but there was really no like spiritual foundation to that. It was just more of a class to promote stretching and deep breathing, which we all need to be breathing deep, because the word breath, spiritus in Latin, is breath, and that is our soul. So we cannot fear things like deep breathing and energy. I mean, I don't think if you don't know what you're doing, you might not want to go running out and, start and channel energy, because you don't really know what you're channeling, especially if you're not grounding yourself and connecting. I see now, I don't really do anything, but I do have conversations with God. Like, I did pray in the shower on Halloween to just say, stop this for the children. And my crown chakra was like going off. So I'm not really like sitting there with like drastic intent. It's like sometimes I have these conversations while I'm driving to a class or whatever. But we're at a point now where we really have to start drawing that line in the sand and start to choose what is within alignment, because this beautiful life that our ancestors have cultivated and created is slowly going down the tubes in this more surveillance state society, and our laws and our policies are getting changed. So we have to open our minds a little bit and lay everything flat on the table, because nobody wants to be wrong, but you know what? We might be. And that is just a personality conflict. Like, I just had a slight little disagreement with somebody who is part of a legislation group here in Washington State, because the Sounders has a bunch of like Antifa people, and a lot of Antifa people are into soccer. I don't know why, but they let them fly pro-Palestine flags, and so I hate Antifa. I don't know, I'll say I strongly dislike Antifa, and I think they're douchebags, but you know what? I'm not choosing any side in this manner, because I think 2 of the 3 Abrahamic religions are a little archaic, and they need some ascension, and it doesn't always fit in with Western principles, especially with women. That it's like, it doesn't, here, I could see if you're like not pro Antifa, but it's, anyways, she leans more on the conservative evangelical side, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, because I think Christians and Christianity are kind of more right in this time. But, the one part of the deception is this whole thing about just being pro-Israel. So it's like, where are we going to go with that conversation? Does that mean, like, if they deserve their land back, shouldn't like the natives in America, Canada, and the indigenous Aboriginals in Australia, shouldn't they get their land back? Like, where the fuck are we going with this? And I understand that it's part of the Bible, but this is also like, when you start looking at agendas, like I talked about in several other videos in Maui, when you look at these agendas that are trying to take place, there is a chaos. Chaos often leads to some sort of war or destruction. Destruction forces people to move, and there's usually within that migration period, there is an agenda that is trying to be fulfilled. Once you start to look at it, I lived in Germany during 2014 and 15, so I saw that whole migration from Syria, and it, when you see this with your eyes and you see how places like that have changed, because I personally think German and Scandinavian men were some of the most respectful guys on this planet. Now, I understand we've all been beaten down to a pulp of being really nice and passive, but who doesn't want to live in a nice society? We all do. same here in Washington State, is like all these masked up progressives, they all want to live in a kind little society. And now that Seattle's turning into a toilet, they're moving to the small towns. They're moving to places like Poulsbo and Bellingham. And guess what? They're turning those places into a toilet with their awful thoughts and agendas. So anyways, we've all been deceived, so what are you going to do about it? Because I feel like when people really start to learn history, and if you are naturally in tune to your intuition and gut, that can easily snap you out of any sort of addiction or convenience factor of, say, like, let's support surveillance state Amazon that wants to spy on you, through your fucking Alexa device because you can't turn the radio dial yourself or can't look up a recipe yourself. It's also having enough, I don't want to use the word willpower, but it's just like that warrior energy that is within you. Everybody has it. That can be ignited to the point where it's like you want to have nothing to do with that side of life. And I really feel like if you need to snap out of any sort of negative behavior, start listening to SRA victims, and that will snap you out of it immediately. And you will be repulsed at giving money to people like Amazon and to all these schmucks that are doing legitimate harm on this planet. So this paradigm shift is going to be really confusing. I do believe the truth is coming out. There's cracks in the system. We are like hoping for the flood to come so it just bursts the door open. But some of us might be right and some of us might be wrong. When you start having people's personal life experiences attached with their beliefs, that's going to project another thought process on what is what. And so once again, when you have millions of those filtering through these black boxes of screens and laptops and phones, it can produce a more a deeper mental asylum than what's already out there with the with the real life horror that's happening in our reality, especially to the children. And if you haven't seen the latest short video that I posted, it's a minute long. It's a mom filmed her kids and basically saying that at school they're teaching that Jesus is bi and non-binary. So if you love Jesus and that type of video brings sadness to your soul or maybe tears to the eye, then maybe we should start shifting toward the companies, people, and things like food, like natural foods that are meant for your betterment, that is better aligned with God. All right, thank you all. See you next time. Bye-bye.